Hello, everybody, and welcome. My name is Leah, and I'm a midlife transition specialist, television host of Awakened with Leah, the next chapter, and an author. I support recently divorced women in midlife who are feeling stuck in fear, self-doubt, and uncertainty about their next chapter to connect to their truth, recognize themselves again, and gain clarity on what they really want so they can feel the freedom of their past and lead with confidence into their next chapter. And today I wanted to bring everyone to the topic of escape syndrome. Escape syndrome is when we're not really dealing with what's in front of us. It could be because of fear or lack of energy or thinking that handling it will be more difficult than it really is. Our perception's off. So I wanted to bring some awareness to how escape syndrome may be showing up for you in hopes that you can notice the signs and start to raise your consciousness. Escape syndrome showed up for me in many different forms throughout my divorce process. And so if you can recognize yourself in any of the ways that I bring up today, the awareness piece of this will be the first step to any changes that we want to make in our life. So the first one, when I was sitting in resentment and anger, I was just bearing my head down, not wanting to look at things. And that was really keeping me drained. And I had absolutely no energy. And then it took me to a place of blame and projecting my anger onto my ex. And it involved a lot of conflict and the energy to push people and situations away. And that was a great way to escape what was going on. There's this defensive reaction to attack, and it's a great way to get someone off your back. Another way that it uh, showed up for me was when I sort of released those emotions a little bit. I found myself coping and tolerating, but what happened was it never really resolved the issue. I mean, it can work for us and we can be functional, but nothing really gets resolved. And the issue doesn't really go away. And so you're never really going after what you want in terms of your big goals and dreams. And once I realized that, I used a little bit of that anger to sort of get me moving out of just tolerating how things were going. And I started filling my time up with helping others. But the issue with that was I was helping others to avoid problems. I was, this was at the root of fixing, not because it feels good. It was an opportunity not to look at my stuff. So I kept on, filling that void with helping others. And then another way that it showed up for me was paralysis by analysis. And, here I was like in my headspace seeking to understand things and because I saw so many opportunities, I kept busy seeking to understand. And, you know, this way I didn't have to feel again what was going on. Or we stay in a state of flow, and I call it the den of Zen. So we don't have to get our feet wet and deal with anything lurking underneath the surface. And so like I mentioned, the awareness of all of how it shows up for us is the first step to any change. And consciousness is the awareness of what we're thinking and what we're feeling and how we're behaving, how we're showing up. And it's important because identifying these aspects of what triggers us to escape and working through those to break through the patterns allows us to make conscious choices and respond to our world versus making a decision due to a reaction. Because when we do that, we're operating unconsciously and we're likely to get ourselves into a situation that isn't beneficial to our emotional well-being. And without awareness, we narrow our ability to choose how we want to respond. A lot of us live in reaction to the unconscious mode, which is, makes sense. It's all we've ever known. But we can get trapped in our own heads and as a result limit ourselves by continuing with old patterns and bad habits, which feels endless and defeating. And so we want to break that mental looping around these patterns, and finding out how and why we get into the pattern can help us avoid repeating the pattern in the future. And I found that by identifying aspects of the triggers that I was getting triggered by, but also identifying the benefits of staying in that negative pattern was important for me to discover, because the benefits could hold you back, because it may keep you from taking risks or trying something new, or even taking ownership of our lives. So when you're aware of it, you can catch it and then work on replacing the old pattern with a new empowering one. And usually the identifying factor is a message that we're giving ourselves, that voice in our head, or it's a limited belief or an assumption or interpretation. I mean, it's all the stories that we've been telling ourselves for years. So discerning between, our perception and the truth, um, what would happen is, we start to achieve a new mindset. So rather than thinking I'm stuck and I can't get out of it, we shift our mindset to I'm feeling stuck right now, but I have all the tools I need to change. So you go from hopeless of finding a solution to being confident. And before I invite my guest up, I just want to leave you with a great tip, and that is to slow down emotionally in order to listen carefully to your internal world, which will allow you to get clarity and to bring your unconscious thoughts, feelings, and actions to your current awareness. So I want to thank you for listening, and I will invite my guest up so we can have a further discussion.
Hey, Lee,
Hi. Hello, Janice. How are you?
how are you? Thank you so much for inviting me up for this really amazing conversation. Um, you know, I think sometimes we want to escape. I think sometimes we get stuck in that kind of realm where we know we should take action, but perhaps we don't for whatever reason. And that may, I think, obviously be very different for everyone. But I'm just wondering, what is a, we always talk about, forgiveness and, can you explain a little bit more about forgiveness? Because I think when you explain it, it just makes so much sense to me. And I think maybe a lot of people may need to hear that, including myself.
Thank you. Yes, forgiveness it's not condoning other people's behavior or even our own behavior. It's understanding that we are all doing the best that we can with what we know. And being in acceptance is, first becoming aware of our own thought process and our feelings and how we're showing up in life. But accepting ourselves, our past, and the patterns that we've developed over time allows us to shift from a, a thought that's not serving us to a more empowering thought. But it's about releasing judgment, um, so that we can look for opportunities for change, and with what's right in front of us without releasing any judgment. We're often unhappy and stuck in a cycle of self-sabotage. So acceptance allows us to believe that there's no mistakes, and everything in our past is an opportunity for growth in the future.
Hmm. Yeah, and I think too, it's maybe perspective or our outlook on something may also have, something to do with that. And I would imagine too, especially during emotional times that may pop up with that.
Absolutely. And, you know, a lot of times we are doing things by default. We're in unconscious reaction mode. So if we want to make any changes, the first thing is to become aware of how we're showing up, which is, you know, why it was important for me to share the different ways that it can show up for us. And from that place of awareness, we're able to dig deeper into that shadow side of us, which may be, you know, uncomfortable, and understanding that we may have been at the cause of our own unhappiness and lack of success. But it's so freeing when we uncover the stories we've been telling ourselves and our thought process, and starting to change our thought process because we're recognizing the truth versus our perception of situations and things about ourselves. And that allows us to step into acceptance and understanding that we are, you know, when we take things personally, we are giving our power away. And so understanding what other people say and do, it's about them. It's not about us. And so when we can not take things personally and release the judgment, it allows us to dive deeper into acceptance.
Yeah, I think sometimes that we maybe put our blinders on, and maybe we don't want to see that for whatever reason. So that certainly makes a lot of sense as far as what you're chatting about. And the mindfulness part, I think too, when we excuse me, when we, for instance, when we hear something that may trigger a certain thought or a feeling, but if we really listened to those thoughts or feelings versus acting upon them, is there some rhyme or reason to that perception of listening to what you're feeling versus hearing and reacting?
Yes. So let me circle back to the first thing you said about, you know, the avoidance piece. There are benefits to the avoidance. And so we need to take a look at what that benefit is. And, you know, typically it will allow us to protect ourselves, not take ownership of our lives, not take risks. So when we bring that to the forefront, because a lot of that is unconscious, that we don't even realize that we're holding on to those benefits, it'll allow us to take the risks that we've been so afraid of. But we also need to understand that everything is working out for us, and we have to trust the process so that we're leading fearlessly. And trusting the process really does allow us to lead fearlessly. But our emotions are our biggest gifts. So if we start to take a look and lean into our emotions, they're giving us all the clues. Our emotions tell us exactly if we are, you know, worried about the future and fretting about the past, and that we need to be in this present moment. When we're feeling guilt, it's, you know, we're living in the expectation of what others think we should be doing or who we should be. So how we feel is the key to uncovering where we want to go, because when we have the understanding of how we feel, we can connect that to what am I thinking that I'm feeling this way. And then that allows us to open up our consciousness in order to be able to take aligned action, and take action aligned more with our values.
Wow, that is so powerful. And as you were talking about the emotion aspect of that, I recall reading one of your articles recently in Brains magazine, and you had talked about I think it was your June article, you talked about how those emotions sometimes infiltrate over, they can permeate any aspect of our lives, and especially when we are our own entrepreneur and building our businesses, and you gave some really great tips there, and you talked about a waves list, and I have a waves list, so thank you so much for writing that article. That was amazing. um, and so maybe it's that aspect too of not maybe being serious when we have to, but not being so serious with ourselves that we maybe don't recognize what's going around us. I know I'm kind of talking.
No, what you're talking to is to move from our head space to our heart space,
Right.
because that will allow us to really be looking at things from a level of lightness. When we're in our head space, we are mentally looping around the thoughts that we have. And when we're connecting more to the heart space and we know and recognize how we're feeling and what we're thinking because of how we're feeling, then that allows us to take our power back by not procrastinating, not avoiding making decisions. And that opens up a whole new world. We have more choices. But when we're sitting in fear and in guilt and we don't understand what those emotions are, and then we're judging them and beating ourselves up, then we're leading into that energy where all of a sudden we were affected physically, and our thoughts directly affect us physically. So all of a sudden you have a thyroid problem, or diabetes shows up, or your metabolism slows down, and it's all related to what our thoughts are. So if we can move a little from the head space to the heart space and feel more of that connection, then we're able to to deal with what's lurking underneath the surface, those hidden insecurities, and not feel like we have to protect ourselves, and be able to take movements forward.
That was so creatively said, and well, gosh, well thought out. You know, I, I'm amazed in so many ways that you are able to, excuse me, really pinpoint something without, and to help people in a way that really, is congruent with what, their beliefs, or, how they feel about a certain subject. And I think we need more Leahs in the world.
Oh, you're so sweet. Thank you. The thing is that the reason I'm so big on awareness is we truly are repelling our ability subconsciously to create the things that we want most, and bringing awareness to the table is an opportunity to see where our blind spots are and how we can go from reaction to response. That's where the juicy potential is. So, I'll tell you, when we're kids, like, we have stress, and this is where our hardwiring between stress and our physiological response to it starts. So it becomes so hardwired that it's not rocket science that as adults, our brain immediately goes to what has always worked, whether that's emotional eating or having a temper tantrum. And so, without a spiritual anchor, that strong sense of self, we tend to doubt our capabilities of creating success. So, it's natural to want to avoid these negative emotions, avoid confrontation, and avoid making decisions, which ultimately can leave you feeling powerless and only have a limited view of choices available to you.
Wow. And, you know, when you mentioned something about the reaction and the response, I really feel that for every action, there is a reaction which creates a response. So maybe it's about reframing that in a way, where our response is more heart centered versus totally in our heads, because sometimes our heads can mess around with us, I guess.
Well, I think it's really understanding the trigger. I mean, nobody can push a button that you don't have. So if if we're both short, for example, and if being short doesn't bother you, then you're not triggered by someone who calls you short. But if I am self-conscious about being short and somebody says something to me about being short, I'm triggered. Now, if I don't take a moment to take a step back and check in with myself, what am I feeling? Why am I triggered? What am I thinking when I'm feeling this way? And of course, taking it personally. So what happens is we tend to blame the other person for triggering us, but really it's our trigger. It's our stuff. And
Uh,
recognizing that, we need to start doing work from that place. But if we are so into um, the thought of needing to protect ourselves, then we will project any insecurities we have onto what other people say and do, giving our power away to them instead of taking ownership of how we feel and what are we going to do about that.
hmm, that is something. I know my time is limited on here, but really, if anyone else wants to chat with Leah, I mean, this has been so informative, and I
Thank you so much. Thank you, Janice. And just so you know, I have a Black Friday special on my
oh,
transformational assessment. I'm taking $100 off the assessment, and the assessment really is a very powerful assessment in order to see how you are showing up and what's hiding unconsciously lurking underneath the surface so that you can uncover your gifts and figure out how to leverage them through this assessment. So it's very powerful in where we're repelling success in our lives. So I have that Black Friday special, just so you know. Oh, and I forgot to add time for you. Okay, I will just continue. So I do have the Black Friday special, $100 off my transformational assessment. And it is a very powerful assessment in really recognizing um, particular insights into your personal life and business life that you may not be aware of. And it helps us to see who you really are versus your perception of who you think you are. So, your natural gifts, your strengths, your potential, and how much of that potential you're actually accessing. And as well as what's getting in the way. So, it's basically, it acts as a mirror to see how your current mindset, meaning your thoughts, your emotions, and behaviors support who you are and who you want to be. Because, they may be working really well for you, but it can also show where it's working against you, especially under stress. So this assessment picks up the conscious aspects of your beliefs and, more importantly, the unconscious beliefs that are hidden underneath the surface that drive us to seek positive change in our lives or block us from following through on what we want to do. So if you would like more information on my assessment, please don't hesitate to reach out. And also, I have a free download, my fear cleanse. You can go to bit.ly/LEAGERLOCK, or Leah at personalchapter.com, and you could download the free download. If nobody else would like to join me, I will end the room for now. And I want to thank you all for chiming in here and helping me spread the wisdom. Thank you.